Okay, amazing. I think we've got our folks rolling in right here. Allison, Gray, screen share looking okay right now?
Looking good.
Yep.
Okay, amazing. So here's what we want to do is as everyone is rolling in, we want to give you all a chance to just drop in the chat. Where are you joining us from this evening? That's the question. Feel free to drop it in the chat. Gray and Allison, you guys can help us out with that too.
Love to.
It's always fun to see where everybody's jumping on board on their laptops, phones. I know we've got some eager folks to be able to be a part of this session tonight, and it's much appreciated to have you all too. We'll probably take about a minute here. I'm seeing more folks come into the room and get settled. So we'll usually just take another like 30 seconds, a minute or so, and just let everybody, I like to talk a lot just to make sure that sound is working. That's mostly why I'm just trying to put some audio out, make sure you guys have all of that situated. And then we'll jump into some fun stuff. Amazing. I'm looking at all these responses right now. Allison, Gray, I'm sure you guys are too. I mean, we are well represented. I'm seeing LA, Odessa, Cleveland, San Diego, Minneapolis, Illinois, Michigan, Nevada, New York, PA, Virginia, Denver. We're hitting all the good spots here. Cool. All right. Well, I think it's about time that we get into this. So my name's Kyle. I am sitting in our EF office here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is the home of EF Gap Year. We have offices all over the world, but this is where the majority of our team works. My virtual background right now is actually the lobby of this building. And tonight, we're really excited to talk to everybody about what EF Gap Year is. So we're going to be covering details about our programs, where you can travel with us, who takes a gap year, what taking a gap program, year, semester, what that is all about. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to make sure that we get everybody out of here by the top of the hour. We're going to have some opportunities for question and answer. So this is going to be super interactive and hopefully informative as well. Last just piece of housekeeping is everyone's going to be on mute. Cameras are off for this session. We want you all to be able to just be comfortable, sit back, relax, but feel free to engage. We have the Q&A feature. We're going to be pulling questions from that throughout this session. So as questions come up, feel free to just drop them in there and then I'll moderate and make sure that we get answers to the best of our ability by the end of this session. Other than that, I think everyone's pretty familiar with Zoom. So we should be able to rock and roll. We have two awesome guests. We have two EF Gap Year alumni that are joining us this evening. So I'm going to give them the chance to both introduce themselves. Allison, would you mind kicking it off and sharing a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'll start. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison. I did a short-term program with EF Gap Year after my senior year of high school, and I went to Costa Rica. I did language in Tamarindo, then I also did service learning in Costa Rica. After that, separately, I went to Malaga with EF Language School, so I kind of had a 3-month time in 2021. And now I just finished my freshman year at Ohio State, and I'm loving it.
Amazing.
And I'm Gray. I took my gap year with EF, or gap semester with EF, in 2019. Started off with the European Immersion tour, went off to Madrid for language courses. I did an internship in Dublin, Leadership Academy after that. And now I'm currently at Northeastern University in Boston.
What a Boston love in here. Cool. All right, so these guys are going to be joining throughout this presentation, and they're actually going to be sharing some of their own experiences, some of their experiences from friends that they met on program, and some from some of their own travels. So we're going to hear more from them. Probably keep it on mute for a couple slides, and then they'll rejoin us once we get into the good stuff and actually talking about some of our programs. So I think to begin tonight, it'll be really helpful, I would imagine, for everyone to just have a quick background on who we are as EF. So EF, Education First, started in 1965. As I mentioned, our North American headquarters is based here in Boston. And for the last 60 plus, or nearly 60 years, excuse me, at this stage, we've quite literally helped millions of people travel, see new places, experience new cultures, learn languages, and hopefully learn cool, interesting things about the world and themselves. So I think a lot of our perspective, it comes from that experience of being able to run programs that span students starting in middle school. And we actually run a variety of programs that go all the way up to adults, and have partnerships with maybe actually your own high schools, but a lot of middle schools, high schools, as well as colleges throughout the country. So, as we've run programs for our gap age students, it's really been a culmination of a lot of the different type of programs that we as an organization have run for decades, and just really fine tuning them to be able to be an impactful opportunity that I think represents the future of where modern education is going. And I think what students are looking for when they're starting to consider options for post-secondary education. So I think alongside some of our experience is one of the big differentiators is that we really think of ourselves as globally local. So as an organization, we have over 50,000 staff in over 110 different countries around the world. So one of the coolest parts about that is, when we're working with students, when we have, folks on the road, it's awesome to be able to just pick up the phone and know that, through my own company directory, I'm reaching out to folks that have an at ef.ed, or excuse me, at ef.com or .edu email address, and that we have that connection already, and especially for our gap students, everywhere that they're traveling are places that we have folks on the ground. So I think it gives us a layer of support, and as well as just a perspective. We want to make sure that the programs that students are doing are relevant, and also have an understanding of the local culture and places that we're visiting. So you'll hear more about how I think this informs some of our own perspective of why we've developed programs the way that we have, and how we think about, as I alluded to, the shifting landscape of education that's in front of us right now. All right, so some context that isn't new news to all of us, but just to confirm it with some data. Since 1980, the cost of college has risen almost 170%. And in that same time frame, wages for folks 20 to 27 years old have only increased around a little less than 20%. So it's a staggering increase. And all that we really do to point to this is it just means that the stakes for the decisions around college have just become extremely high. And we feel that, we see that as we speak with families and talk to students. And we know that decisions that happen just aren't as easy as they used to be. And for many of you, I think we also culturally live in a world here, for most of us in the States, that is driving us towards college, and that's almost become the expectation of what comes next. And I think also at the same time, many of us, I know myself, thinking about the path of needing to be definitive on a major and choose a area of study that could determine the rest of your life at 18 years old can feel like a lot of pressure. It can feel like a big choice to be able to make. So we know that I think that this ties into not only future of education, but I think we see that the mental toll that this takes on students, and how under-resourced universities are right now, seeing that around 50% of college students are feeling reports of anxiety and depression. And it's why we see dropout rates in the same place that we do. And I think all that this alludes to is that more and more families and universities and high schools and counselors and teachers are just thinking about, is there a better path? Is there another path to be able to help set your student up and all of our students up to be able to really feel confident and successful in their next step? So one of the other pieces I mentioned before, so part of our perspective of being a large employer is that we hire thousands of staff every year. Our organization of 50,000 plus each year, we think a lot about what we look for as we hire young folks. And we also, along with other global companies, know that the most successful of our organization are confident, they're constantly learning, they're globally minded, and they're comfortable in the face of uncertainty or ambiguity, which we know is not in short supply these days. So I don't think we need to highlight anymore how rapidly the world is changing, because we're all feeling it every single day. So I think that that's really why we have built these programs, is that we want our students to be able to have the capacity, the tools, the resources, the experience to be happy, fulfilled, successful in the modern world, and highlighting that that does look different than it did even just a handful of years ago. And more than ever, I think we're just coming to understand that growth can happen anywhere, and we're really leaning into the uniqueness of experiential education that doesn't just need to happen within the four walls of a classroom. And tonight I think you'll hear some stories about being on service projects and being able to connect with not only a new friend or a new community, but also the environment and the world. It also might be through an internship or a business focused experience that actually gives you some more hands-on perspective of what it's like in the quote unquote real world, or what to think about or anticipate in the future. I think, Gray and Allison have some moments that just look like this, grabbing a espresso or a cappuccino and just hanging out and grabbing food and making some moments and memories that last a long time. And really all of that, I think, begins with leaving our comfort zone, getting on the plane for that first time, and saying, hey, I can do this, even if I'm maybe a little bit scared and uncertain and not sure exactly how it will go. So the culmination for this, to bring it back to what our mission is for our programs, is that really we want students to be able to thrive in an ever-changing world. And it's everything that I just mentioned, with helping them to discover more about themselves, get out of their comfort zone, and take on what's next for them. So the way that we do that is through our GAP program. So we have 3 different tiers of program lengths that we offer. We have short-term programs that we call, which are typically around 4 weeks in length. Our semester programs, which are more of a traditional 10 to 11 week program, and then a full gap year. So we're going to give you all perspective on the unique pieces of each one of those. In everything that we talk about too, just some of the logistics, and part of what we do is really we are helping you organize start to finish. So every program that we discuss will include, and we will organize and book all of your flights, all of your transportation, your accommodation, on-program emergency support, the activities, the excursions you're taking part of, a percentage of your meals, as well as pre-departure support and mentorship. With that, I think a big question that we get is really, what does that on-program support system look like? So this is where I'm going to ask Allison and Gray to be able to chime in a little bit. I think the way that we present this is that there's a few layers of support that every student will have, regardless of which GAP program they're on. First is your group. It's your cohort. It's your new friends that you don't even know yet. I think Allison's got a good story about that. It's the people that you're meeting along the way. The second is all of your program staff. So these are going to be some of your tour directors, your guides on program, your language school staff, your field directors, like all of those folks that I mentioned that are local, that really support all of our programming. And then it's also your gap year program advisors. So that's our team that works with all of our enrolled students pre-departure and while they're on program, to make sure that they have someone that they can reach out to for anything that might come up. It's also so that families have someone that they can reach out to, and we can really problem solve anything. I think Gray, you might have a couple of examples of that. So Allison, maybe you can just highlight, what comes to mind when you think about this, your layers of support.
Yeah, so I guess I would start with your cohort. On there it says AKA your new best friends. That's so true. And I often think about this piece is actually one of my struggles that I overcame. And when you go on these trips, most of the time, you're going by yourself and you don't know anyone who's going to be in your cohort. The first real interaction I had was on a connecting flight. I just saw a bunch of kids around my age sitting with backpacks, like awkwardly talking to each other. And I'm like, that's who I'm supposed to be with. And, you go and introduce yourself. And as soon as we got to our orientation in Costa Rica, we had a dinner, and it was the most casual dinner you could expect. We're in Costa Rica, this isn't a nice thing. And then a bunch of people like had really nice dresses on and makeup. And I was like, oh no, what did I do? I was questioning myself, like, these cannot be my people. What have I done? And then by the end, I was incredibly sad to leave them. I learned so much from my cohort, and we spent so much time together that we really bonded and kind of became a family. And at the end, we were like, oh, what trip are we going to do together next? And it was so cool to see that. At first, I was like, I don't know. And then I was incredibly sad to leave them. So you do get a lot of support from those people around you. They're the ones going through it with you, and they definitely won't be in short supply.
That's awesome. Thank you, Allison. Great. Did anything come up for you just when you think about, I don't know, whether it's other folks that are with you, tour directors, advisors?
No, absolutely. I mean, I guess just going off what Allison said, like, she 100% is right. You're all in the same boat together, and that's sort of what bonds a lot of people. Is, you're thrown into the sea and you're all in that together, and that's how you make some really incredible kind of relationships with people. And even I remember having the same experience where I was texting home on the first day, being like, "This is not what I like. This is not my kind of people." And then 4 days later, I was getting texts from home saying, "Yeah, we haven't heard from you like in a day or so. Like, what's going on?" And I just would forget to text home because I'm enjoying time with my friends and everything. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the advisors and the guides and everything like that, I had plenty of experience with that. I was in Dublin and Madrid. Ended up getting sick in both places, but that's definitely on me because I would stay up late to watch NBA games from back home that would start like 12:30 European time. So yeah, I mean, I would get sick, and there were plenty of times where I had to use those advisors, and they were just super helpful in kind of getting me whatever kind of care I needed. And even times where you're just like, kind of trying to figure out how to get into, I remember in Madrid, I was trying to figure out, like, I want to go to a soccer game. How does that happen? And I literally reached out and they helped me kind of get in contact with somebody at the school who knew stuff about that. So literally they're a resource for anything. And even just tour directors, tour director we had was, his name was Alex, just the coolest dude. He spoke like 6 languages. He was telling us he grew up in London and was going through like tech and stuff through school. And at the end of that, just didn't want to do it and just left to Australia to work, and worked in a bunch of different countries and everything. He was doing this now that he kind of settled down. With him, it was the same thing. He knew people everywhere just from his travels. And, sometimes you'd say, I'm looking for a cool place to go. I just want to go experience a cool place in Barcelona or Rome, wherever you're going. And he would always know a place. I remember having a lunch in Madrid or in Amsterdam where we just sat down and talked about like passions in life. And I literally included that in like my college essay. So yeah, I mean, I think, the advisors are always super helpful. The guides are super cool. I've heard from other programs it's similar. So yeah, I've only had great experiences with them.
That's awesome. Great. I know, obviously I've done some travel with EF myself, and every like tour director or field director that I meet, they have just some of the most interesting life stories that I've ever been a part of. And a lot of them are incredibly smart too, and have like worked at universities or taught as well, and kind of infusing some of their own education background too. So, all right, great. We're about to transition into some programs here. I'm going to drop another question in here, which is, when are you thinking about traveling? If you've got something on your mind, that's just great to get some feedback from folks. So feel free to drop that in the chat. Allison and Gray, you can help us keep an eye on that. But our first category here is our short-term programs. So these programs are all 4 weeks, 1 month in length. The core structure, the general structure for all of these, is that we start off with an orientation, typically happening on program in the location that you're traveling to. It's a focused experience that the module or the program is centered around, and then a wrap up. At the end, you are with a group, start to finish, so same type of format. You're going to be with our program staff that's leading you, or if it's maybe a language-based program, the language school that's on the ground as well. So 4 programs that we're looking at in the coming year ahead. First would be our European Discovery, which is one that we're really excited about. I think we've gotten a lot of really good feedback on. It's a newer program, the way that it's designed. Right now, it's meant to be able to give students exposure to a bit of a breadth of different types of experience. So throughout this month, students can expect to visit the UK, spend time in London, spend time in Normandy with obviously an impactful history focus there. We'll spend time in Paris with a theme around art and architecture. We'll visit Lucerne, Switzerland, and head up into kind of a core area of the Alps. We'll spend time in Italy. What's the focus in Italy? Of course, food, Bologna and Florence, and then we'll wrap up in Rome. So a number of different cities, and again, like a lot of students that come to us, they're saying, I'd love to be able to get a little bit more perspective and life experience. That's really where European Discovery is focused on. The next would be language and culture in Spain. So a lot of our students and a lot of students in the States have maybe gotten the exposure to studying a bit of Spanish in high school. I think, Allison, you're in this boat before. And they're like, okay, high school Spanish has been okay, right? It would be cool to actually be able to use it in the future. So this is based around our school in Malaga. Allison can highlight any questions if folks have about the specific area. So we want you to be able to actually spend time at the language school, which means you're taking classes Monday through Friday. You're actually working in a classroom with other students, practicing your Spanish. So a few hours a day where you're actively practicing that. And then you're living locally with either a host or living in a residence. Think of it more like a dorm style accommodation, but we really wanted to have that feel of living abroad in a new city and in a supported environment where you're with other folks, and then you have, EF staff and support on the ground. And then we want you to also get the perspective of visiting a few other cities. So Gray, you love Madrid. We're starting off in Madrid, spending time there. We're also visiting Seville, we're visiting Valencia, and then wrapping up in Barcelona. So it's a bit of a tour de force in Spain, and a great balance of exactly what it says. I know we're geniuses with the name, language and culture. Like, I think it really nails it right on the head there. Okay, next program, Sustainable Development Costa Rica. So the way that we run our service-based programs and our sustainability-focused programs is we have a network of relationships with local NGOs in the countries that we run these service programs in. So for us, we really want students to be able to be a part of programs that are impactful, they're meaningful, they're sustainable, and it gives us the chance to not only do work that is supporting communities and following the UN Sustainable Development Guidelines, things like, as you can see quickly from the photo, maybe working with endangered sea turtles could be one project you're a part of. Maybe another is actually working directly with students in the school or in an after school type of program. So we want to not only do that work, we also want to understand why is it important that we are supporting these organizations that are doing this work. We want to understand how they're helping to lift up either if it's the marine environment or if it's actual the community and providing more educational opportunities for students in areas that we're visiting. And we want to be able to see a few different locations within the country. So in sustainable development, we'll spend time in San Jose, we'll spend time in the coast, we'll spend time in Corcovado, we'll spend time up in the mountains, Monteverde and the Arenal region, and then we'll actually wrap up with sessions back in San Jose at the UN's University for Peace. So a bit of a focused emphasis to tie it all together, where we can just make sense of the work that we've done and think about how do we bring this type of experience with us back home. Last one. So we have a partnership with the Hult International Business School for this program, Global Business in London. We actually have students there right now that are having a ton of fun. We already have one student that's actually applying to transfer to Hult because they're having a great experience. And Hult's an accredited international business school. It's in its name. They've got campuses in London and then in Boston, as well as San Francisco in the States. So this program is meant to give students exposure to the core fundamentals of business. So we're going to take classes around entrepreneurship, product development, even accounting, and introductions there, with the idea of in the first 3 weeks we're developing some of the core understanding, core competencies, and then in our final week you're actually going to be tasked with a business case study. So in the past we've partnered with different companies, one of them being Unilever, Fortune 500 company that has brands like Ben and Jerry's, other ones, but I think that's all we need to know, right? Ice cream for the win. So you'll be given a case study where with your small group, you're actually going to be going through the process of breaking down what is the challenge that you've been presented, coming up with solutions, putting together a pitch, and then presenting that to their executives in the final week, all while you're living in central London, which means that we have our staff on the ground set up so that you've got sightseeing, you've got optional activities throughout your week. We build in a weekend to Paris so that we can go and see the Louvre, the Eiffel Tower, and also have some free time while we're there. So it's, I think, an amazing balance of someone that maybe wants to get some exposure to something that is a bit more business focused, aren't exactly sure what they might want to study in college. And that program is running next summer of 2023, right around this time next year. So I think let's do the same thing. Allison, Gray, is there anything that you guys would want to chime in on? I think you both have experience traveling in a few of these locations. Is there any of like your favorite spots that you would really want to highlight? And Allison, maybe you could help us get started. I think sometimes folks don't know maybe much about like Spain too. So is there anything that you think would be helpful for folks to know about the language school too?
Yeah, I can talk on a couple of these because I did short-term programs. I actually did go to the school in Malaga. I did that separate from EF Gap Year, and I did it with the language school. So I was there for 4 weeks, which is the same amount of time. And I loved it. It's an amazing city. It's a bit smaller than somewhere like Barcelona, so you can really, get your footing there. And it's on a beautiful beach. I just love it. And the classes themselves are real classes. Like you're studying Spanish, which I think is the great part of this program. You're not just hanging out, but you really get to learn. And the professors there are so helpful, even though there's students coming in and out every week. And then you also get to live in a homestay. That's, I think, I'm not sure on this program, but I think you are allowed to. And, really getting to be somewhere for an entire month and understanding the culture is amazing. And I know that on this program, you also get to see a couple of other cities, and that's something I couldn't do because I wasn't on the EF Gap Year trip, which is new. So I think it's definitely something to take advantage of. I love Spain. And then I also did sustainable development in Costa Rica. So I wanted to touch on that because I had such a great time. I did some reforestation projects, stayed on a sustainable farm, and I did go to the UN University for Peace. This is a perfect program, I think, if you're interested in anything about service, sustainable development. Costa Rica is like the model for sustainable development. It's a great place to learn from the nonprofits that EF works with. They're always eager to talk to you and help. And it really impacted me and what I want to do in the future. So I definitely love both of those programs.
Allison, what do you think about, I think, there's sometimes just questions about, is a month long enough? Is it too long? We also have semester programs. So sometimes folks are like, should I maybe just be trying to do a semester? But what do you think about the length?
Personally, I think the length is enough. I'm someone who likes to go big. So if I could do more, honestly, I totally would. But you will get out of these programs that you want to. It's a long enough time to learn about yourself, learn about the world around you, gain confidence, personal growth, all those things you will get in 4 weeks. And I was in 4 weeks in both these places, so I know. And something that I think is amazing about the 4-week program is that it gives you time to, it's a shortened period of time, so you make sure you take the most of it. You're not wasting your time because you're there for 4 weeks, but you're definitely still getting a lot out of it.
Cool. That's a great way to think of it. Awesome. Gray, I think you were going to help on the semester too. Anything that you would add just as we're looking at some of these?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I didn't do any sort of service programs because I was doing internships and language school stuff. But I mean, just in terms of the, European discovery, London, Spain, I think speaking on all those, since my gap year, I've been back to plenty of places since, and like, especially London, it's become one of like my favorite places where I think I've been back there, like traveling by myself 4 times now, just because I love, it's such a cool place. And I think, going there for 4 weeks, it's a huge place where even in 4 weeks, I don't think you could really, I guess, see all of it in a way. I mean, obviously you can kind of travel around, but to really get into it, 4 weeks is it's definitely a good amount of time. And I think, in terms of language and culture in Spain, I could definitely speak on that just because Madrid was probably my favorite place that I went to throughout my gap year. And, I think that something that's really special about Spain is just how warm the culture is. and how encouraging people are of like when you go there, how people want to show you their culture. They want to show you, food. They want to show you experiences. They want to, talk to you about the language and stuff like that. And I guess going off what you said about is 4 weeks enough time, I guess from my experience, I would just say that, I went there, I knew zero Spanish. I knew nobody at the time in Spain. I knew nobody on my program like in Spain. And 4 weeks later, I was able to, when people would speak Spanish to me, I could get a pretty good idea of what they're saying. And I could kind of break it down. And, obviously talking is pretty difficult, but still working on it now. But even, just from the culture side of it, there's a family that I got to know pretty well there. I ended up teaching their son how to play basketball because I always would find my basketball courts there. They were just the warmest people where, they ended up bringing me to basketball games, like soccer games. They invited me over to their house where I like had lunch with them and like their extended family to like, have like traditional Spanish food and everything. They're giving me like travel recommendations saying like, I think if I was there a week longer, they're like, oh, you have to go down to Sevilla and everything. So yeah, I mean, I think just I was there for 4 weeks, and within 4 weeks, that family I talk about, they ended up visiting us in Boston a couple years ago, and like we showed them around here. So I got plenty done in 4 weeks, I'd say. So it's definitely enough time for sure.
That's what travel's about right there, right? It's those
Yeah.
connections, and like, how else do you make that happen? That's awesome. Cool. Well, I think we'll move into our semester, which, for folks like Gray and, a lot of our students, we know that having the opportunity to travel is rare. So I think a lot of our students come into this saying, if I can make a semester or a year work, that's what I'd like to do, to be able to just try to capitalize on that time period as much as possible. So similar format here. Our semester programs will all begin with an orientation. The difference is they'll have a multi-country experience and just a bit more of a multi-dimensional experience, and then they'll close with a wrap-up. So there's 5 different semester programs that we run here. The best way to think about these 2 programs is there's really 2 different categories of type of semesters that we run. And when I'm thinking about timing here, just so everyone knows, all of our start dates are going to be September for the fall, January for the spring. We run these this coming fall as well as 2023. And we have folks that are already enrolled for next fall so that they can take advantage of payment plans and just life planning through and through. So we have 2 programs that are our 10-week programs. We call this one the Pathfinder, the Changemaker. Now, both of these are structured in a way that gives students the opportunity to really get a lot of perspective by visiting a few different countries and being able to take part in different activities along the way. For example, the Pathfinder is really centered around, similar in concept to European Discovery, where you're visiting different countries and cities, that we have themes in each one of those countries that's really highlighting, the focus of our experience and how we're spending our time there, with the intent of a student that wants to, again, like get that perspective of being able to go to the UK and visit France and visit Germany and Switzerland. Oh, and by the way, we start off in Iceland for the first 2 weeks where we're visiting a few different places and visiting with fishermen and learning about renewable energy and environmental science. But Pathfinder pulls together themes around environmental science, history, business, culture. We close out in Italy in Pathfinder as well. And that's where we're going to do our orientation and wrap up. So it's super exciting. We're really looking forward to this fall. And you're also with that group of students start to finish. You're with the EF staff that's leading you along the way. And I think similar in concept, we've created the Changemaker, where we want to give students, again, like a breadth of experience and exposure to different locations, but really a heavier emphasis on service and sustainability. So for the Changemaker, you're going to also get the chance to spend time with a few of those NGO partners along the way. And for that, we're visiting countries like Costa Rica, Panama, Ecuador, and Peru. We're visiting Machu Picchu. So if we think about like bucket list opportunities during a gap experience, that's included in there. And I also think for a student that maybe, I don't know, I know myself, I gravitate a little bit more towards like the smaller city or a little bit more of a rural environment. Like Changemaker is really a great fit for that student. If some of these bigger metro European cities just don't maybe stand out as much, and the idea of learning more about service, the environment, how that actually impacts local communities, the Changemaker is really designed for that. The second category would be a little bit more of our modular based semesters that are combining different activities and also giving students a little bit more, I'd say, a heightened sense of independence throughout programs. So for something like the Discoverer, which is what Gray was a part of. So starting off, we have 2 weeks of guided exploration through Europe, visiting cities like London, Paris, Amsterdam, Barcelona, then spending a month at your choice of a language school. So it could be in Barcelona, or it could be in Nice in France. It could be in Rome as well to learn Italian and live with the local Italian family. Then you can move on to do a month-long internship. So cities like Seville, Stockholm, Sweden has become a very, very popular city, as well as Dublin, Ireland. And we partner with local organizations there, smaller typically in size, 10, 20, 30 employees. And the goal is to give students exposure to what is it like to work in a professional setting? What is it like to live in an apartment, to commute to your internship during the day? And we want students to be able to learn more about the business that they're working in or the industry that they're working in. So we've had folks work at places like radio stations, nonprofits, museums. We've also had them work at digital marketing agencies. They've worked for real estate companies and investment organizations. And they've also worked for PR agencies as well. Sorry, off the top of my head, pulling all these together. But I think our goal is to, again, put you in a position where you can learn and walk away saying, okay, I understand more about what the real world, what the professional world is like. So Globetrotter is going to be similar in concept. It also gives students the opportunity to participate in an internship. If anyone knows offhand in the photo, they're going to recognize the Sydney Harbor Bridge there. So internship in Globetrotter is in Sydney, which is one of the best cities that we have for internship. I think that the culture is close enough professionally to the US, but also different enough that it really highlights some of the differences structurally between the two countries. And in Globetrotter, you're also getting the chance to pull in some of that service experience. So you'll actually begin with a month of service work in Thailand before you then go on to a month of an internship in Sydney. So pretty contrasting experiences with the goal of like maximizing a lot of your semester. And then the Explorer begins with 2 weeks of European immersion, a month of language study in Europe, and then a month of service in Thailand before we wrap up at the end. Lots of stuff going on here. I think we've covered a good bit. Everything that Allison and Gray have shared about their experiences, it's going to be very comparable, very similar, maybe just even a little bit longer. Is there any notes that you guys might have around internships? So as we get into semester and year, I know that we get a lot of questions around that. Is there anything that you guys might want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, I think that you kind of hit it on the head, which is that I did my gap semester right out of high school. So previously before that, a lot of jobs that I had were kind of basic sort of high school jobs and stuff like that. Where going into this, my internship, I was working for a volunteer organization in Dublin, and yeah, I mean it was definitely, it's a professional environment, and I think that EF does a good job of you might not be working your dream job, but you're going to be doing something that you can kind of enjoy and get through and have fun time doing. And, it really is like living the adult life when you're doing your internship for that month. You're getting your own food, you're kind of living your own life, and obviously you have your EF resources, but you have an opportunity to sort of just be an adult. Throughout my time, I learned things that I really enjoyed about work, like, kind of one-on-one communication, stuff like that. People skills that I learned that were really important for me and that I enjoyed. And obviously stuff I didn't. I didn't love working on Salesforce for hours. That was not my kind of thing. So I learned in the future, maybe jobs like that aren't for me. But it was really helpful. I got a great recommendation for them in the end. So yeah, it was a really helpful experience for me.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Gray. It's one thing I wanted to follow up on with that, Gray, is I know sometimes folks come and they've got maybe a field of interest and they're like, you know what, I think I might want to study this in school, but I'm not sure, but I think I want to get an internship in that field. I don't know. What's your experience? Do you feel like you need an internship in a specific field for it to be successful, or what have you seen? Because I know you obviously had friends that were in different internships too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the important thing is just that it doesn't really have to be in that specific field. But I think the important thing is that it's work that, as you said, it feels like a legit like adult job, I guess, where you're not working at, as we were talking before, it's like an ice cream shop or something like that. Like you're actually doing serious work where you can really kind of find the kind of specific qualities about the job that can apply to any job that you really do enjoy and some that you don't enjoy. So I think from my experiences and other people have done internships as well, whether it's, desk work, people skills, maybe you are a math person and really enjoy kind of doing stuff like that, working on statistics. Maybe you really enjoy talking to people on the phone and, going through sales and everything. I think those sorts of skills can apply to a lot of different jobs in different fields, kind of no matter what you're doing, and kind of figuring out those things you like and don't like is really important and helpful.
Well said. I like that. All right, cool. So now we're going to transition into the year. So one of the cool concepts for everything that we've discussed is that everything Allison and Gray have been highlighting is going to be true, whether it's in the semester or whether it's in a year. Conceptually, really the biggest thing that changes is just the length, obviously, as the name implies, but also the group, the cohort that you're with. So all of our programs operate independently. So if you're on a short-term program, you're sort of on one schedule. If you're on a semester, you're on another. And if you're on a year, you're on another semester. So it's not necessarily that all of these like interlace and overlap. They're sort of their own separate program. It's all unique. And for us, obviously, we need to have all of the planning for flights, accommodations, et cetera, planned out separately. So for the year, it's set up just like an academic year would be. So it's 25 weeks over 2 semesters. Fall semester, a winter break where you come home, recharge, rest, share all of your awesome photos and stories, and then kick off the spring in late January to continue. The core elements are orientation, our guided exploration through Europe, our language immersion service. That's when we have our break, is right after your service module. Then we have Australia, New Zealand immersion, internship, and then leadership academy at Ashridge, actually, which Gray, you can highlight some more of that when we get to it. So we'll just give a feel of like what each part feels like. Gray and Allison, stop me as we go. I think orientation is meant to really just be a focal point so that we're in that transition from home to, oh my God, now I'm abroad and I'm with all these new people. There's a little bit of a buffer, a support system, and some direction as to what is expected and what is to come. Is there anything that either of you would highlight just around orientation, like be just kicking the program off? This is one that like flies by, so it might even be in the back of your memory.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from my perspective, so I've done the orientation at Ashridge, and I guess I'll talk a little bit about Ashridge when we get to the leadership academy. But I've also worked the Boston orientation as a kind of just alumni leader. And as you said, it's just you get through a lot of the kind of important stuff about how to travel effectively and everything like that, and kind of helpful tips. But also, it's just a great like icebreaker. It's a great way to kind of get to know people and meet people. As I said earlier, you're on the same boat. Everybody's nervous to be there. No one's, perfectly calm and cool. So it's a great way to kind of bond over that. And, if you've never been to Boston, it's a great way to kind of get to know Boston. You'll have a little bit of time to kind of travel around a little bit like that. But yeah, as you said, just a good place to kind of get to know people, break the ice a little bit, and settle in.
It's a great way to put it. Yep. And I will note that for the year, orientation is in Boston. Different programs on our semesters and short term do take place in different locations. We try to be strategic. For example, Allison's orientation for sustainable development was in San Jose. We want to get you right in so that you can roll from there and then not have to jump on the flight. But for the year, we have a buffer, a few days in Boston to get to know the group is, I think, pretty important for everybody there. And it's in this building. We've got a bit of a campus here in Cambridge, so it's really, really fun. It's awesome energy too, Gray. I think you probably felt that. Everybody coming together. It's like it's the first day of school, except there's no tests to study for, so it's that much more fun. Okay, then we jump into European immersion. So this is 2 weeks of traveling, and the reason we put this in here is it's a great icebreaker. It's a great transition, and we're saying that if you're going to be going to see the world. We want to make sure that you get some of the bucket list places checked off your list. And it's a cool way to just get to know the rest of your group. So this is a pretty busy 2 weeks. We're going to pack a good amount in here through these 4 main cities. We are taking care of all the accommodation. EF staff is going to be with you in the morning. We're going to have different sightseeing opportunities every day. There's going to be a balance of, there'll be some group dinners in there. There'll also be plenty of free time and free meals. Again, so you can hang out and get to know other folks that you're meeting along the way. And I think sometimes, Gray, you've been through this too, so I don't know if there's other perspectives you want to add, but I think sometimes this is a little bit overlooked. It's easy to get excited about, I'm going to go like learn Spanish, or I'm going to go do an internship. But I think that a lot of times, if you look back and just know that like, wow, that was like really cool to, I know one of our students before talking about right in front of the Eiffel Tower, her and her new group of friends that met like literally just a few days ago were like just grabbing some lunch and hanging out and talking just about like kind of life and wrapping up senior year and their transition into gap year. And she's like, I still remember that moment, like among all of the ones that I had throughout my whole year, just because it was so different and also fun and special. So I think it presents some of those type of opportunities along the way. Anything else that you would highlight there, Gray?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think that it's really good just about, it balances the kind of time between you'll see all the kind of the landmarks, like the things that people tell you to kind of see whenever you travel to any of these places. But then you also have plenty of time to kind of do things on your own. And I think the good thing that, too, is that you go through the kind of landmark things, like, in London, you'll see the, the London Eye, and you'll see Big Ben and all that. But then also I think that, through your tour director and all that, you'll kind of get these, I guess, experiences that you wouldn't normally have, just because you kind of have that special insight. And, I think, as you said, it does get overlooked because there's a lot of amazing experiences you can have here. And even just in the kind of few days that you spend in each location, I remember in Barcelona watching my friend sing Piano Man at a karaoke bar. And then I remember in Paris, we went up to like this basilica and like sat on the steps and watched the sunset over like the Paris skyline, which is like still to this day, like the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, I think that you can have some pretty incredible memories just even in a few days. And it is a good balance of, allowing you to dive in the culture as much as you want in your own free time, while also kind of seeing the things that you should see in each of those locations if you go.
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. I'm just keeping an eye on the clock. We're going to move a little bit faster through here. So we've heard a good bit about language study and our language school in Malaga that Allison highlighted. So we have EF language campuses in all of these cities. These are all options on the year. It's a ton of choice. And I think that's one of the things that we're most excited about. So whether you have no language background or you've been studying for years, we have a level that you can place in when you get to the school so that you're at the appropriate level. But really, it's all about living in the city, having a local experience, whether you do live with a host or live in a residence, and then taking language classes where you're going to be with a lot of other students, and you'll have the support of the school and our staff while you're there. Then we move into service learning. So there's actually 4 different countries that we run our service programs in. Again, similar concept based on the partnership of NGO relationships that we have, where you're going to be spending 6 weeks. We're going to bounce all over the country. You're usually going to visit somewhere between 3 and 5 different NGOs and spend time there, but we'll also build in time to rest, time to travel. And we think of the concept is our 3-3-1 ratio. So 3 days of service, 3 days of culture and travel, and a day of rest. And that's our format for the 6 weeks, just so that we're keeping it balanced. And we really want to be mindful. It's easy to go a little bit too fast and build a little bit too much in there. So I think we're pretty conscious of how we structure this service projects module so that it's fun, but we're also not out of gas at the end of it. We just heard a bunch from Gray about internships, a number of different cities here. I think standouts for us, Stockholm, Sydney, Dublin are always super popular. And then, places like Tokyo, Seville, Berlin are also more niche, but amazing experiences that maybe a lot of students don't know as much about. With internships, I know we had a specific question on this. We don't have a list of internships. This is really driven by our team and our advisors. So part of our process is, as you're speaking with your gap consultant, we're going to be learning about your goals, your interests, And your advisor is going to be helping you to actually make that match and that pairing. And you're going to go through a whole process. You're going to put through a resume together. You're going to have an interview. I don't know if you remember doing that, Gray. That happens, a few weeks before getting to your internship. But we want you to have that experience of actually going through that, and then you secure the internship. And again, our goal is that we want to put you in a spot that we think is going to be the best setup. And of course, that's based a little bit on our experience. And it's never a perfect match, but also the idea of internship is to try something a little bit different. And I think that usually resonates well with a lot of our groups. Then we close out with Leadership Academy. So it's a week, we're bringing the entire cohort together. So whether you're on semester, it'll be your semester cohort, year, it'll be your year cohort. And this is where we specifically wrap up for the year, is this bottom left, Ash Ridge House. Great, what do they need to know about Ash Ridge and anything about Leadership Academy, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just keeping it short, it's a beautiful place, Ash Ridge. I would highly suggest getting up early one day and just one time taking a walk through the gardens early. It's amazing. But yeah, Leadership Academy in general, it's just so fun because it is like the kind of culmination of everything where you reconnect with people who you haven't seen for a while, and just kind of celebrate the whole experience you've had, and kind of say goodbye to everybody. And well, not say goodbye, see you soon. That's what I like to say. But yeah, I mean, between that, you also have, some really cool kind of team building experiences. We had somebody do like a public speaking workshop, which sounds boring, but it was amazing. Yeah, you got plenty of kind of good stuff like that. That's really helpful and useful, along with just kind of having a good send off.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Just a couple quick highlights. We've heard a lot from our alumni here, but just to give you all perspectives, this is another one of our students, Annabelle, who actually also goes to school in Boston. Weird how that all happened, but this is some different modules, just show a different pathing of how you might think about approaching the year. So language study in Costa Rica, which we're not offering for this coming year. So it could be language study in Spain, service in the DR, probably the most underrated location that we do any of our work in, and then internship back in Spain. We had Diego, who did language study in Spain, service in Costa Rica, internship in Berlin. Cool story for Diego. Allison, Gray, you guys may have like anecdotally heard some similar experiences. Diego didn't get into his first choice school, joined us on the gap year with the goal of kind of starting fresh and potentially reapplying or just coming up with a new target list of schools. He ended up reapplying, got in, which was Parsons School of Design, which is where he goes to school now. And I think that we've seen that be a differentiator. If a gap can be an opportunity to just show that you're really invested in your next step and a way to go above and beyond and to highlight some really unique experience. So I'm sure you guys have seen similar pieces to that too. So I think closing is that we know that there's a lot of perceptions and also misconceptions around a gap year. That gap can mean that gap years are for kids that are off track, or for people that already are off track, or it takes you off track, or anything that just isn't true. I think that this is really a way to actually lean into getting more out of not only this time in your life, but setting you up to be someone that actually becomes less risk averse, more keen for opportunities, and really being confident to take on new challenges in a way that students that just maybe aren't set up to do unless they're going through an experience similar to this. And for us, it's close to 100% that are going on to college. Or I think just another note is that we have a lot of students that are joining us during college. I was actually a student that went to college for a year, then took a gap semester myself, and then went back to school too. And it's been a difference maker for me. I mean, it's part of why I'm here tonight. It's part of why I love what we do and really believe in this program. And there's countless other stories of similar students. And I think also with COVID being thrown in the mix in the last few years, we know that there's just a lot of ways to get ultimately to graduation at the end. So would hope everyone would have the chance to consider that tonight. I'm going to move right through here, just close with some of the overview on financials. Everything is on our website as well. Really important is if any of this resonated with you this evening, and I hope it did, the best thing that you can do from here, really how everything flows for us is by connecting with your gap year consultant. So maybe you're already in touch with them. If so, you probably texted with them or connected with them over email. If you have not, you will hear from them tomorrow. We'll just do a quick introduction and find the best time to speak, if that makes sense for you. But there's so much nuance in for us getting to know our students, making sure that they're a good fit for the program, that you have all the information that you need to make a good decision with your family. And we just want to make sure that we're there to support you along your journey. So if you're looking to take a next step forward, it would be to speak with your gap consultant, set up time with them. You can reach out to them tonight, or you'll definitely hear from them tomorrow. That's on all of our game plan tomorrow. And I think we've got a few more minutes. Gray and Allison, I might ask for like an extra 3 minutes because I think that there's a few important questions in here. If anyone has any burning questions that they haven't gotten answered yet, maybe you guys could both just talk a little bit about like spending money, because I know that's a very common one. Just how would you think about that? Did you do anything in particular for budgeting that you found was helpful? Did you see something else that someone else did that worked well? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I'll be honest. So before COVID hit, I was planning on doing the full year. So I spent a couple years saving up for that and then only ended up doing 3 months. So I didn't have to budget too much, but I had friends who did. And if you really just focus on spending most of your money on food, and I definitely recommend eating local food at like smaller restaurants. It's the best food and it'll save you a lot of money. And then as far as spending money goes, like souvenirs aren't really that necessary because especially if you're on one of the longer programs, you're going to be lugging your stuff around. So I don't think that like you should focus most of your money on that. That said, if for paying for the trip, I know if you sign up earlier, you do have more time to, save up for that. So I definitely recommend signing up earlier so that you have more time to budget.
Awesome. Okay, great. I'm taking a look. Did either of you take part in the credit? Or I know that's you guys both know Samantha, who took part in credit. Do you maybe want to just talk from her experience? What was like doing that as part of her program like? Is that okay to ask for that too?
Yeah, I can talk on that. So I recently met Sam and I was talking to her about the credit that she did. And one of her projects was to take portraits of people on the streets in her different locations and learn about their cultures and kind of how do they respond and just make connections with strangers. And she said that was one of the most amazing parts of her program. And she was talking to me about how the credit program really helped her think deeper and reflect more on her program while she was there. I know for a lot of alumni, we get that kind of reflection after, but for her, she got that reflection while she was on her trip, and it didn't take anything away from her trip either.
Great. And just so everyone knows, there's different levels of college credit depending on the program. Mostly it's tied to length. So short term versus semester versus year, there's different options. And that's typically something that we're finalizing after you're enrolled on the program. So usually something that we can discuss as you're considering, and then it's something you can decide a little bit later on in your process. I think just last question, I know a few questions on being able to get the recording, and we are going to be able to send that out afterwards. I think we've got anyone that requested it in the chat, we'll be able to send it to you specifically, typically send that over email. And most importantly, just thank everyone for joining us. This was an awesome group. We had a big turnout, I think over 60, maybe up close to 70, it looks like, folks that were in here this evening. Huge thank you to Allison and Gray. As I said before, the summer is typically for like hanging out, watching shows. Although Gray, you guys can tell, loves basketball, so the NBA is not on, so he figured he'd join us this evening.
Devastating time of year.
No summer league games for Gray tonight, but we hope that no matter where this leads you, whether it's with EF Gap Year or another EF program, just appreciate you all joining this evening. We hope we get to talk to you, and maybe we'll talk again soon. Allison and Gray, we'll talk to you guys soon. Everybody have an awesome evening. Thank you all so much.